What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Pioneer video and in our quest to chronicle every Tier 1 deck in both the Modern and Pioneer format. Today in Pioneer we're going to look at a newcomer who looked like could potentially be a flash in the pan as we had some pretty huge bannings before the regional championship in Atlanta in December, and looks like it's a mainstay, currently the 4th most played deck in Pioneer as of the recording of this video. Very powerful combo, very powerful synergies, and a little bit of innovation and tweaking has been done to make sure that this deck can thoroughly attack the modern or the Pioneer metagame, excuse me. And today we're going to be taking a look at an Abzan Amalia combo for the Pioneer format and see what legs this newcomer has to attack the format and try to be successful. Of course, before we get too deep into it, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos like this, other modern content, and other longer form videos, please consider subscribing, ring notification bell so you know when those videos get posted. If you go into the description down below, you'll see a link to the deck list and a link to my Discord server. If you are interested in joining the Discord server, join over there. And tune in on Saturdays as well as we record, well, rather post the Casual Spikes podcast, where episode 2 is going to be coming out. We're going to be talking about the European Regional Championship that happened this past weekend, going over some of the surprises, some things that weren't surprising, and in general how the modern metagame is going to go forward, and other topics, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. Okay, so Abzan Amalia combo is based around this card, Amalia Benavides Aguirre, which I'm assuming is how you say that. I'm going to leave it to just Amalia from that because that's probably the best take I'm going to have saying this name. So it's a white and a black for a 2/2. It has Ward, pay 3 life, so if your opponent targets this with a spell or ability, the spell or ability is countered unless they pay 3 life. And then whenever you gain life, Amalia explores. Then you destroy all other creatures if its power is exactly 20. So you could slowly kind of build up over time. You can, gain a little bit of life here and there. Obviously, the best way to kind of abuse this and try to get multiple triggers is to find ways to gain 1 life a bunch of times individually. And you get to explore a ton, and then eventually you just can kind of get to wipe the board. Now, this in itself, maybe being like kind of a grindy, like card advantage-y type white-black card, maybe you get some like death triggers and you can drain your opponent with like some Blood Artist type effects or whatever. This is not what that deck is doing at all. It's actually trying to abuse another 2-drop from an Ixalan set, and that is Wild Growth Walker, after I struggle to find it. Wild Growth Walker is a 2-mana 1/3 that whenever a creature you control explores, you put a +1/+1 counter on Wild Growth Walker and you gain 3 life. This card was kind of a staple in Standard, back in its time. We had like these decks that were playing like an Explorer package. Your Wild Growth Walker can be huge. It ends up living like some of your one-sided wraths that like just kind of like give the board like -X. So usually Wild Growth Walker is able to like survive those after a few Explorer triggers and whatnot, leaving around a giant beat stick / really, really nice defensive creature back for you that is going to gain you some additional advantage. Here, it combos perfectly with Amalia, and the fact that as long as you can gain life or explore, they're going to trigger each other. So you explore with Amalia, you look at your top card and you draw if it's a land, or you put it into your graveyard, leave it on top if it's anything else. And then your Wild Growth Walker is like, oh hey, you explored, let's put a +1/+1 counter on me, gain 3 life, and then Amalia is like, okay, let's explore again, so on. So then essentially you have this infinite loop that is going to trigger a bunch of times until Amalia reaches 20 power and destroys all creatures, destroying the Wild Growth Walker, ending the loop. While you're doing this, you're flipping through the top of your deck. You're not putting counters on Amalia when you draw cards, so like you're looking at, however many cards, like however many spells until you get Amalia to exactly 20 power. So usually before you were playing this card here, Aetherflux Reservoir, you were kind of flipping till you hit like a Return to the Ranks, so that when you just destroyed the board and you got rid of all your creatures, you got rid of like your Wild Growth Walker and so on. If your opponent killed your Amalia, you could just Return to the Ranks for 2, get back Wild Growth Walker Amalia. Usually you want to do it for 3 so you can get something like a Senate Scout or like a Lunarch Veteran. Bring them back into play and then just start your combo all over again and essentially present your board to your opponent like, hey, like now you need to beat this again. So like, this wasn't a guaranteed way that you could win the game, but it was like an almost guaranteed way that you were going to put Amalia back into play. Then you were going to put Wild Growth Walker back into play, and then you were going to assemble a huge 20 power attacker to just end the game. Now with Aether Flux Reservoir, whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell that you cast this turn. You pay 50 life, and it deals 50 damage to target creature or player. Obviously, you're not looking to abuse this in the way that decks typically abuse Aether Flux Reservoirs, just like casting cheap spells, returning them all back to the hand, casting more free spells to gain more life. This deck, obviously, once you kind of assemble your combo, you're going to presumably get, at least hopefully in your case, like 17 triggers a minimum. 17 times 3, it's like some quick math, is like 51. So you gain 51 life. Obviously, you're above 50, or you're above 0, so you have like at minimum 52 life. Then you're able to pay 50 life and 50 your opponent, and more than likely just kill them. This, I would imagine, in a way, you're able to kind of like combo and like hit your opponent for 50 and then attack with a giant Amalia, and that could be a way that you end the game, like in the mirror and stuff. But Aether Flux Reservoir is essentially like a win condition that says like, I'm going to win the game now, rather than hoping that your creature kind of gets to stick around and live. This deck also is playing some other creatures that kind of help forward like the game plan just a little bit. You have Senate Scout that when it enters the battlefield it explores, so it's like a cheap creature to kind of get the Amalia plus Wild Growth Walker kind of chain going. You have Lunarch Veteran and Prosperous Innkeeper that allow you to gain 1 life when another creature you control enters the battlefield. So then you can kind of have the setup where you play a Lunarch on 1, you play a Wild Growth Walker on 2, and then an Amalia on 3, and then you can do it. The best way to do it is to go Lunarch, Amalia, get your trigger, and then play Wild Growth Walker, because then the Amalia is able to attack on turn 3, which is kind of the benefit of playing a deck like this, because you just get to potentially end the game on turn 3. Well, even if your opponent is able to like add to the board and try to like come up with blockers and stuff, they're an aggro deck, they're just going to get ran over by the fact that most of the time Amalia is going to get through unchecked and end up swinging for lethal. You have Adina Soul Stepper. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life, and then you can pay 1 and sacrifice another creature, and Adina gets +X+0, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So this is a way, if you have like Adina and Amalia in play, you are able to get a bunch of triggers from like you gaining life and doing your thing. You can drain your opponent. This way, if you have a Dina plus Amalia and a Wild Growth Walker and you're kind of comboing off, you can also attack with like a Dina and Amalia, and then you're able to, if the Amalia gets sacked, you're able to sacrifice the Amalia to Dina. Dina's going to get huge and then hit your opponent for that much damage +1, or, you just end up getting it with Amalia. A little bit of combo potential. Obviously, it's a little bit of work to get Dina in play with a Amalia after an Amalia has already kind of gone off, but with the return to the ranks, you're able to like have for 4 you could get your usual setup of like Lunarch or Prosperous Innkeeper, Amalia, Wild Growth Walker, and then like a Dina, and then you're just kind of going through and exploring a bunch. And as long as you can explore at least 20 times, which I would say is pretty likely, considering that you're going to just try to like not go through your deck completely. You're going to hit lands that still technically counts as exploring. That you can just drain your opponent with Dina, and then, like I said, if for some reason that doesn't work, you have Aether Flux Reservoir, a ton of life, and then an Amalia that is at 20 power. Going further, you have Voice of Resurgence. Voice of Resurgence is like a card that's pretty good in like blue-white control, where it punishes them for like interacting with you on your turn. You can make some pretty big tokens, and also allows you to have something left behind after an Amalia goes nuclear. You can like kill your Voice of Resurgence, you end up getting a token. It's only going to be a 2/2, but again, you have like sitting on like Return to the Ranks, you have Core to Call and Collect Company, whatever. Like the token will eventually get bigger as you kind of play like your creatures and things like that. Skyclave Apparition is a little bit of interaction. This is kind of like a way that you can kind of stall out the game so you don't die. You know, essentially with this deck, you're looking for a combination of creatures, something akin to Yawgmoth, where Yawgmoth wants 2 specific creatures, and then it wants Yawgmoth, and then it wants a 4th creature to kind of win the game. This deck is at least looking for Amalia, Wildgrowth Walker, and then a Lunarch Veteran and a Prosperous Innkeeper to kind of like do its thing, and then you're looking for either like a Dina to like drain your opponent, or you're looking for Aetherflux Reservoir. So you're looking for multiple pieces to kind of work out, and Skyclave Apparitions is like a way that you can, you know, interact with your opponent and try to like stall them out a little bit to give yourself as much time as possible to draw into your combo. We talked about Return to the Ranks. Court of Calling lets you search for a creature of mana value X or less, put it directly onto the battlefield. Collected Company is a little bit more explosive at the cost of being a lot more restrictive, where you can look at the top 6 cards, you put 2 creatures with converted mana cost 2 or less from among them onto the battlefield, you put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Obviously, the dream is already having, you know, if you have like a Wildgrowth Walker, Amalia, or a Lunarch Veteran, or a Prosperous Innkeeper, what have you, Collected Company into the other 2 pieces, and then you're able to kind of combo off on your opponent's end step, and then virtually give the Amalia haste by the fact that you've done this on your opponent's end step. So that's the main deck. The land base, you have 3 Blooming Marsh, you have a Boseiju, and a Takenuma as your kind of these like utility like channel lands. Takenuma, I would say, probably being the more important of the 2. The fact that it kind of gives you a little bit of a grind element by getting to kind of like pay the channel cost for this and then go and get, you know, like an Amalia back, or go get a Wildgrowth Walker, or whatever piece that you might be missing, or any card that you might have milled over in the process of doing the Amalia combo that you're going to need to kind of interact with your opponent. And I think that'll come up a little bit more with some of these creatures that are in the sideboard. But, you know, just very good utility land. Virtually free. A little bit worse, I'd say, in this deck because there's only like 5 spells in the main deck that care about having black mana for them. You have 1 Godless Shrine, you have 4 Mana Confluence. This is just, you know, counterintuitive to play a land that makes you pay a life to add 1 mana of any color. I think a little bit more so when, you know, you're looking at something like an Aetherflux Reservoir and you only have like 5 black spells. Yeah, I think you could probably split the mana base up a little bit more, but it also kind of supports these black cards in the sideboard as well. So you kind of have to have a little bit of give and take. You have 3 Overgrown Tomb, 3 Plains, 4 Rage of Urge Thicket, the Takenuma that we talked about in the Temple Garden as your lands. So really only 2 utility lands in this deck, and some of them, some amount of the time, more often than others, you're going to get a discount because you do have like Amalia, Dina in the main deck. So some amount of the time you will have like a little bit of a cheaper cost for these channel cards. Sideboard, you have another Boseiju. You got Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, Knight of Dusk's Shadow, which says your opponents can't gain life, which is, I would imagine, is just pretty good in the mirror. You have Bane Whip Punisher. Say that 5 times fast. As a buff, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and then you sacrifice a destroy creature as a -1/-1 counter on it. So it seems like kind of a removal spell. I would imagine, at least. Unfortunate that's like 3 mana, because then you can't get it back with Return to the Ranks. But aside from that, you know, pretty neat technology, if I do say so myself. You have Redain, which does not like to actually be brought up on Goldfish, just so you know. Redain is like a 3 mana angel that does some things. It's actually been a while since I've seen like a Redain God of the Worthy. I know like the backside is really good against, you know, like Rakdos Sack, because it prevents 1 damage if a source your opponent control would deal damage to you. You reduce it by 1, which means that if it deals 1, then it ends up being 0. So I guess good on them. 4 Land on the Void for those graveyard decks, just to get some free interaction. Of course, you're able to cast it as well with some of the black sources that you have in the deck. You have like a Draenith Magistrate as well. More Voice of Resurgence. Draenith Magistrate's interesting because your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. I'm trying to think of, you know, like a few scenarios where Draenith Magistrate actually comes up, and I'm sure the probably is. I think the main one's like Discovery, because like you cast the spell when you discover, or you can like put it into your hand. And it's whatever the case may be. Like, I guess you slow down like those like Quintorius Khan like combo decks, which, you know, it is what it is. This deck, usually can typically goldfish faster than the Quintorius version of like those discovered decks can go off. So to me, it kind of is what it is. But yeah, that is the Amalia combo deck for the Pioneer format. Obviously very powerful. You have a deck that can win the game on turn 3. Just no BS, nothing. You just outright can win the game on turn 3. It has a little bit of flexibility in the main deck in terms of getting to interact with your opponent, have a few more cards that are more specific to the current metagame that we are looking at, and then, of course, getting to sideboard into some other hate pieces that you have, essentially 4 hard tutors for, and then a card that is more than likely going to allow you to find them and take whatever your opponent can produce onto the board, or just kind of disrupt their game plan in a meaningful way. So, I mean, overall, I really like the deck. I think it's powerful for sure. We'll see if it ends up getting more of a metagame share in the future, or if it just kind of gets to stick around that like 3 to 4 spot, where I think it's probably like sitting at maybe like tier 1.5 status, as we kind of look at, blue-white control, Is It Phoenix, and the Rakdos mid-range deck. Slowly not even really slowly taking over the format, just continuing to be dominant in the format. So that's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video, subscribe as well if you are not already subscribed, ring notification bell so you know when more videos get posted. Be on the lookout for the second episode of the Casual Spikes podcast as well, while we talk about more Modern and Pioneer, especially with some major Modern tournament just passed, and another one coming up here soon. And, of course, check out the deck list in the description down below, along with the Discord server. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.